Episode 18 of the Trackside podcast is here. Ben is back with me today to run through the Brilliance in Baku. Ben, how are we doing?
I'm really happy to be back. It feels like an eternity since the last time I was on it, and especially when we made a big deal out of the fact that I did every episode last year, and then when I missed Canada early on in the year, it was like a big deal that I'd missed that. To then miss two in a row for unforeseen circumstances was quite frustrating, actually. But I'm here now, and then it's annoying we can't have Will with us, but he's got other commitments as well. So we will be back as a trio, I'm sure, for Singapore. But for now, it's me and you that will go through, as you said, Brilliance in Baku, because it was one hell of a weekend.
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. And to agree with you, I'm excited to have the three of us back again. It feels, as you said, it feels like forever since we were last all together. But hopefully that will be happening next week.
Do you know what we've got to do, Ollie?
Singapore Grand Prix.
Do you know what we've got to do? We need to go go-karting again.
We do.
I think that's what we need. We need a team bonding sesh, and I think it needs to be at Team Sport Karting somewhere.
Well, there's the one in Watford that's near us in Wembley, so we'll definitely be going there again.
That's true. Or we could even I think there's like one in Acton. I don't know if it's any good. That one, to be fair, might only be a downstairs one. I don't know. But either way, I think we need to do another one this year. I think
definitely.
Anyway,
but we've not only missed you, Ben. We have also missed the predictions. For the past 3 weeks, 3 race weeks now, we have not known how many points we stand on in the predictions, apart from Ben, as he has all the numbers that we need to know. Now, this is something that we've included this year. If you're a first-time listener, our predictions is something that we've included this year to the podcast to bring a bit more excitement for us. We thought, it might be a bit more of a boring season again. Obviously, we know now that's not the case. But at the start of the year, we thought, right, to add a bit of spice to the rest of the season, let's add in a predictions league. And up until about round 7 or 8 in this year's championship, we were all getting pretty high scores. But since then, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's going to win. And the past 3 episodes, we don't actually know the results because Ben hasn't been here. So, Ben, take it away.
Okay, so as you mentioned there, it will be the Dutch Grand Prix, the Italian Grand Prix, and of course the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. So it's a shame Will isn't here, really, but we will start with the Grand Prix in Zandvoort. And I can confirm that for that weekend as a whole, I scored 3 points. My 3 points coming from getting Verstappen P2 in qualifying and Russell P4 in qualifying. You'll have to cast your mind back, folks, to when this all happened. But I can assure you that these things definitely happened. Will scored 1 point for the whole weekend as well, with only getting Piastri P3 in quali. And my 3rd point came from Piastri P4 in the race. I can confirm for that weekend that I scored 3, Will scored 1, and Ollie scored 0. Ollie went blank for the 3rd time this season, which is quite incredible. So he may have seen that and he decided to play his bonus card, if you will, for Italy. Now, if you don't know what that is, because we started the predictions league for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, we didn't have any for Bahrain, the season opener. So we thought, let's somehow bring that back in a way by giving a double points. Now, the way it works, of course, is if you get all 5 right, you get 10 anyway. So that still remains the same. You don't all of a sudden get 20. But, of course, if you score 1, you'll have 2, 4, etc., etc. So he played this card for Italy. Oh, and by the way, you can't play this for sprint weekends. Before you think, well, why wouldn't you just use a sprint? You can't do that. So we moved to Italy, and I scored for the entire weekend 2 points. Will scored 3 points, and Ollie scored 2 points. So therefore scored 4 points. In qualifying, I got Norris on pole correct. Ollie also got Norris on pole correct, and Will got Norris first, Piastri second, Leclerc 4. So he did really, really well in quali. And then in the race, me and Ollie both got predicted Piastri to finish P2. So, unfortunately for you, Ollie, didn't really go to plan, your duplicate card.
No, it didn't. And the thing that's annoying is it's happened so many times this season where I've been so tempted to put someone in a certain position, mainly the race winner or someone to get on pole. And I've been so tempted, and then I've gone, no, that's stupid. That's stupid. I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. But I had a feeling that Sunday morning at Monza, I had a gut feeling. I was like, I think Leclerc could do this. I really do think Leclerc could do this. And then, for whatever reason, I decided it's Leclerc. He's not.
I think with these last, I think how many races we got now? Seven left.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you just need to sort of go bold and just trust your gut. And if you're going to recuperate any form of high scoring points, then because as well, me and Will could very easily become quite tactical and just go with the same. So Ollie, there's a fourth on that. What is the fourth for you? Isn't it like? Oh yes, it's got to be a Danny Rick Crystal Palace shirt.
No, it's not. No. I'll accept the Danny Rick, but Crystal Palace is a no-no.
But the thing is,
I've actually got a signed Brighton football next to me right here. So yeah, that's not.
The thing is, though, surely as well, whatever the forfeit, the loser has to pay for it as well.
I think we did agree on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good, because otherwise that just I feel like defeats the point. Right, and then moving in to Azerbaijan, the entire weekend, myself and you scored 4 points, and Will came out on top with 5. Now, in Q qualifying, both me and you predicted Leclerc to score pole, and Will predicted Piastri P2. Then in the race, both me and you predicted Piastri to win, Leclerc to come second, and Verstappen to come 5th. But Will, the lucky guy that he is, he always gets like these little ones here and there. Like he got Piastri, Leclerc, Verstappen, and he also got George Russell in 3rd, which he should never have had. And actually, I think you had like Perez 3rd and Sainz 4th, something like that. And
at one point, I had it. I had the whole top 5. I had Oscar, Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, then Max, and that was the top 5 at one point in the race. And I was like, "Cool, I'm fine. I've got double points for the first time."
So, and then for the overall scores, I can tell you that in 3rd place with 49 points is Ollie King. In 2nd place with 61 points is me. And leading the way on 63 points is Will. So it's still really neck and neck with me and Will. But you do find yourself quite distant, I may say. But as we know in the Predictions League, anything can happen at any time. But yeah, you trail me by quite a few points. But there you go. But for me and Will, it is still very close. No one seems to really be getting away from the other. But there you go. I can actually now delete all these previous predictions that I've just had stored for like the next time I was on the podcast, which was a long time ago. But there we go. That is the Predictions League. So I think we're still waiting for a 10-pointer for Ollie. I scored mine in Imola, and Will scored his in Canada. But you've got 7 opportunities left to go, Ollie. Don't count yourself out yet, mate.
I know. It's looking quite bleak for me, and this I might add this Danny Rick hat into my shopping basket now, rather than at the end of the season. Just hope that there's a sale on at some point. But yeah. I think we should
dive into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and I think the first thing I want to talk about is, so going into the weekend, that the talk, the hype was about McLaren, was about papaya rules. Okay, now you and Will have obviously spoken about what you've spoken about in the previous 2 races. I don't need to come in and talk over that, but it is very much a conversation of what was going to happen between Lando and Oscar. Was Oscar going to have to almost be considered a second driver? Although I did actually read somewhere that the contract he signed, Mark Webber, whether this is true or not, obviously I don't know, but I did read something that was along the lines of it was that Oscar Piastri cannot be considered a second driver, something that was put in a contract, which I'm sure Mark Webber probably was like, I didn't like my days at Red Bull with Seb Vettel, so I don't want the same thing happen to you, mate. But whether or not what would happen there, and would they let Lando through? All for Lando to be knocked out in Q1 and find himself P17. Now, not really his fault. I've got to be honest, not really his fault. The way that it works is that there was a slow Alpine, and I think it was Ocon, and normally that would be a white flag. And the reason that he was slow isn't because he had an issue, it's because he was on a slow lap. But for whatever reason, they put it as a yellow. So therefore, he had to slow down in that sector, and that was that. And that was his qualifying over. Very harsh on him.
Was it the slow lap he was on, or was it the lap that he was coming in after getting that puncture just before the castle section?
Well, Ocon?
Yeah. Because he got a puncture in qualifying, didn't he? Yeah. No, he got a puncture in qualifying, and he's left rear, I think it was off. So I think that's why it would have been a yellow. I'm not. I think that's what I think it was. I mean, I might have just be total lapse in my judgment of things that happened this weekend, but yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it was the fact that he'd had a puncture.
Oh,
I might be mistaken.
Because I mean, even Andrea Stella and Lando Norris, even after the race weekend, were still saying for whatever reason it was a yellow and not a white flag. So I didn't think it was anything to do with Ocon having an issue. I thought it was just a slow lap. But either way, that affected Lando Norris. So all of a sudden, you've got your, I am going to bring out the quotation mark, title contender out in Q1, which is, not great. But I also wanted to talk about Franco Colapinto getting into Q3. Big deal for him there. And he qualified in P9, beating Alex Albon. Something Logan Sargent never did in a normal Grand Prix weekend. I think he did in a sprint, but not in 2 races in. That, for you, the feeder series lover, you must have been very proud of him.
Oh no, it was a brilliant moment. I think I've said that. I think I said this to Will in the last episode. The way that Franco is handling himself, not only on the track, like his actual driving skills and his talent on the track, but his personality off the track. It seems very upbeat. It seems like everyone in the paddock seems to love Franco and what he brings to the sport. And as fact, like I don't think I've seen one fan. I mean, obviously, Formula One Twitter is like an absolute minefield at the moment. It is such a toxic place to be, but I've not seen one hateful comment said on Franco's behalf. He is so well loved, and it is so well deserved. He is driving absolutely fantastically. Obviously, Alex might have set a faster lap if it wasn't for his engine cooler being left in above his head, but he still qualified in front of him, and that's something he had to do. I mean, in Q2,
still got to Q3 in the first place.
Exactly, and I think Q2 as well, he came P6, which is a fantastic result for him. I mean, obviously it's Q2, it just puts you into the next round, but to get into Q3, then to put it P9, which meant he then started P8 because Lewis took his engine penalty. It was just a fantastic way to start his weekend. Obviously, you had another rookie driver, or not rookie, but another young driver, and Ollie Beerman on the grid as well, replacing Kevin Magnussen and Haas. I'm sure we'll get onto that in a minute. But yeah, great qualifying for Franco. Great result in the end for him. I think it was P8 in the race, I want to say, ahead of Lewis and Beerman.
Yep.
So yeah, great result for him and the Williams team. Obviously, Alex finishing in 7th, just ahead of him. So double points for Williams. Great result for them. And it looks like the gamble on bringing a rookie in who no one expected is certainly paying off for the Williams team. But just quickly going back to your points on McLaren, it was, certainly an interesting start to the actual racing of the weekend. Obviously, we had the practice on the Friday and the Saturday morning. But yeah, qualifying, seeing Lando go out in Q1, it was interesting. It was weird because he was on such a good lap. I think he was 0.6 up on his best time, which obviously would have put him through into Q2, coming into the end of the second sector. And then all of a sudden, we're looking at the pictures that are on our screens, and we just see in the timing screens Lando Norris in pit. And I was with my girlfriend and her family. And we all looked at each other like, what's going on? And we see P17, Lando Norris out in Q1. So yeah, for a huge spanner in the works, as they say.
This is my take this weekend on McLaren, and you can have this ready to clip if you feel. But my thing is, I think personally, I don't think the weekend could have gone any better for McLaren. Now you'll look at that and you'll listen to that and you'll go, "What on earth are you talking about?" Their so-called title rival should have won. You could have had a 1-2, whatever. You could have come out with 26 plus 18. What are you talking about? I think because of the so-called drama and the papaya rules and going into this weekend and what would happen between Oscar and Lando, and would they potentially say to Oscar, you've got to let Lando through and all that, to have Lando totally out the picture, of course, is not ideal. But the way that the weekend ended up with Lando coming through, overtaking Max, and yes, only coming out with a 3-point advantage, but still coming out with an advantage on Max, and having Oscar perform the way that he did and almost be free to race and show off his skills without any form of team order was perfect for them. I genuinely don't think it could have gone better. I think after qualifying on Saturday, that was the best possible outcome for Sunday to start. He ended up starting P15 with other penalties because Gasly was disqualified for qualifying. Lewis took an engine penalty as well. For him to come to make 11 places, to come all the way through the field, to beat Max, to get fastest lap as well. So 3-point advantage on him, and have Oscar Piastri do what he did, I think was brilliant. And of course, as well, you've now got both drivers on 2 race wins. It's taken Oscar 18 months to win 2 races, and it's taken Lando 5 years. But the car that McLaren have right now is, of course, the greatest that they've had since both drivers have been in, Lando obviously included. I just think it was a perfect weekend for them, and I'm really sort of excited to see where it goes now because, of course, really, despite it mathematically being possible for the likes of Leclerc and Piastri to maybe go on and win the championship, it is only between Max and Lando. I still believe it's Max's. I still think it's too big. I think it's 59 points now. And the thing is with Max, he'll probably get the car to P4, P5 most weeks. There'll be a week where he gets a P2 because he's Max Verstappen and he'll be able to harvest it out the car. Lando's not going to win every week. So I do still think it's Max to win, but McLaren do now lead the constructors. And I called it from the start in our season predictions that they would win that. And I think it's now definitely theirs to lose. Good weekend for my home team.
Definitely. I mean, I don't think it was even the start of this season that you said that McLaren were going to win the constructors. I think you said it in the last few episodes of our last season. So
I didn't pay him to say this, I promise.
Mystic Ben strikes again. But yes, as you said, a brilliant win from Oscar. And I mean, that he's dry. It wasn't just I can't even find any words to describe how good of a drive it was. It was everything
unbelievable.
It's that the meme from The Boys. Everything was perfect. Every last detail, everything was just perfect. I mean, the overtake he sent on Leclerc, I want to say when they both started braking, I think Oscar must have been 15 to 20 meters back, which is, I was looking at it when they were showing it when Karun was showing it on the Sky Pad. I think that's like 3 or 4 grid slots.
Wow.
Which is just mind-blowing that he sent a move from that distance and then to pull it off, not go into the wall on the exit, which drivers come so close to doing around Baku, which is, I mean, that's why I love Baku. They get so close to the wall at pretty much every single exit. It's brilliant to watch. But no, that move to go down the inside of Leclerc was phenomenal. But then to also hold him off for as long as he did, there must have been about, I think it was the last 20 laps, I reckon it must have been, where he was actively trying to hold him off. It was only within the last about 5 that he got the big enough gap to just kind of go, you know what, he's not in my DRS anymore. I can relax a little bit, obviously not too much, but he could back off a little bit if he needed to. But it was just it was clear as day what was happening every single time. It was Leclerc, if he got into within 6 tenths of Oscar coming out of turn 16, you were thinking, oh, okay, there could be an overtake here going into turn 1. But Oscar all the time would go to the inside, push Leclerc to the outside, and Charles, unfortunately for him, couldn't do anything about it. And Oscar had that move down to a T every single lap. He timed it perfectly. And I mean, after watching this weekend and after seeing what he's been doing this year, I think a lot of people are forgetting he's only been in the sport for 18 months.
I know, it's crazy. And I think just defensively was brilliant. I think I've said before, when Carlos Sainz has had races where he's been defensive, I think of Singapore, I think of Italy last year. It sometimes it's actually so good. Sometimes you actually don't need overtaking to have a good race. Of course, a race like a Monaco where there's absolutely nothing, no. But in races where you've got drivers that are able to defend and there's not this constant just DRS pull, if you will, of just constantly drivers being able to go past because of the speed difference. It's really exciting to watch. And Leclerc, sort of, his rear tyres were gone by the end. In my opinion, I think Leclerc got really, really lucky. Actually, no, before I say that, I do want to mention that he's now taken pole 4 times in a row in Baku and yet to actually win the race. That's that's crazy. 4 poles in a row at the same track, same circuit, not won any of them. Wow, that's really not good. I wouldn't like that stat attached to my name. But yeah, I think for Leclerc, I think he got very lucky with the crash at the end between Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, because I think he would have ended up P4 otherwise. His tyres were cooked at the end. And as soon as Sainz got past Perez, he would have got past Leclerc, and I don't think he would have been able to hold up Perez. But we've got to talk about that crash, because who saw that coming?
I don't want to say I did, but it was kind of, you could feel something was brewing. I mean, the fact that it was the 3 initially of Piastri, Leclerc and Perez that were all in DRS getting really close lap after lap. It was kind of like you could kind of feel something brewing. Add another car into the mix and then it all goes boom. I mean, it was a racing incident, in my opinion. I mean, you look at both of their onboards, their steering wheels are dead straight. They're not turning into each other, trying to cause a collision. Both cars are simply, the way that the track goes, they've simply just moved and they've followed their line they were initially on. They've stuck to their line. They haven't intentionally moved across the track to cause a collision. It's just something that happened. And I mean, everyone behind them benefited from that. I mean, obviously, Ollie Beerman as well got a point, which he said he didn't really deserve. But
I think I just, on the crash, so it reminded me a bit of like an F1 lobby where you end up catching wheels, but in the live action of it, of course, I'm not thinking anything. I'm just thinking, oh my God, crash, crash, whatever. But if it had been a little flick, Sainz would have gone to the side and kind of spun. But because they actually locked the wheels, Sainz is straight. They both angle straight away, so they're both into the wall, like sort of nose first. Whereas instead of it kind of being a little hit, like the Verstappen Hamilton crash at Silverstone, it would have been like a tap, and the car would have turned like that and gone off like that, and he would have hit it from like the side. Sainz would have sort of hit it from his right side, being spun. But because they lock wheels, they go in together. It obviously, I didn't see it coming personally. I thought there was going to be a fight for second. Leclerc was going to lose out, or Ferrari were going to try and team up together, or whatever. But I definitely did not see a crash coming. I think Sergio Perez, because he's had a lot of stick this year, and rightly so, but then also rightly so, should be praised this weekend, was by far better than Verstappen all throughout the weekend. Outqualified him for the first time since Miami last year. Was obviously on course for a podium, potentially a P2. The king of the streets, but unfortunately it wasn't to be for him in the end. But I think that was a very good performance for him.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, as you said, he's had a lot of stick and a lot of criticism this year, not just from us, but from pretty much anyone across any form of social media that actively takes part in reporting on Formula One as the sport. And this race weekend, It's unfortunate it ended for him how it did. Obviously, you could see how annoyed and distraught he was because he was doing really, really well, and it just kind of. I don't think people should look at this weekend for Perez and go, he can only have one moment of brilliance. We know that he can do well at Baku every single year. Let's not forget, he's the only driver to win at this circuit twice. At Baku, he is absolutely phenomenal. He is a brilliant driver. This season just hasn't gone for him. And when your teammate is the best driver or one of the best drivers on the grid, it's near to impossible to keep up with the standards that your teammate is setting. So I think
but I do find it interesting after what he said last week about it being, I've been finishing like where I've been finishing for a while now, and all of a sudden Max is sort of raised a few eyebrows. And I'm absolutely not taking anything away from him this weekend, but I just do find it funny how that was voiced, and then all of a sudden he had a better car this weekend. But I wouldn't read too much into that.
No, not at all. But I just quickly want to go back onto Piastri quickly. I don't think we can gloss over his victory at all, because I think what this win displayed was what F1 should be about. I don't think it's about one driver going off and winning by 20 seconds. That doesn't prove who the best driver is. That just shows who has the quickest car. A win like this displays who is the cut above the rest in terms of who can potentially go on and win a championship, who can fight for a title, or who can deliver in high pressure situations. And Piastri has done that. I mean, I've spoke so highly of him all year. I've said, obviously, he's won Formula 3, Formula 2, and Formula 4 in consecutive years. And yesterday showed how good his racecraft is. Like, you put 2 or 3 other drivers maybe that you would think could fight for a title in that situation, they'll come together. Like, I mean, if you put Verstappen in the situation with Leclerc, Norris maybe in the situation with Leclerc, and I'd probably even say George in the situation with Leclerc, you'd probably end up seeing a collision. But the way that they both drove, they showed each other so much respect, but at the same time they fought each other really, really hard. And this is a really big prediction, and this is just for next year. But if McLaren have the trajectory that they keep on having, they keep on going up and up and up and up, and the team orders, the papaya rules and all that nonsense goes away at the start of next year, I well and truly believe Oscar could win the championship next year. He is, for me, it showed this race weekend how good he can be at fighting other drivers. He's a clean driver, but he knows where to place his car and when to make the right moves. He is a phenomenal driver. I think people are looking at him and going, oh, well, he's got 2 wins, so has Norris. So why is he being thrown away and Norris is being put as the number 1 driver? And I think Piastri should be number 1 driver at McLaren, but that's not going to happen. We all know that. But
I don't think my thing on number 1 and number 2 drivers is I don't think top teams should have number 1 and number 2 drivers. I just don't. I don't think that should be the way. I think when you look at Mercedes, when they had Hamilton and Rosberg, it was very much a case of just get on with it, don't crash into each other. Do you know what I mean? But obviously McLaren are still learning. They're now top of the championship for the first time since 2014, after Australia, the first race where Button and Magnussen were on the podium. But really, they're actually the top of the championship, fighting to win it for the first time since 2008. So it's a long. There'll be many people in the team that were obviously not there for either one of those occasions. There'll probably be some people, but not many. So despite it being a winning team of the past and a team that are very, very well known in the history of Formula One, a lot of the people within will not be used to this. So they're going to have to take time to learn and adapt to it. And I know they've now had, really since Austria last year was when it started, but actually this year being the proper year where it's kind of, they're winning races and getting constant pole positions or whatever. We shall. I think, like I said, the constructors is definitely theirs to lose. But Ferrari, to be fair, are well in that fight as well now. There's a chance Red Bull, I think Red Bull probably do finish 3rd now, actually, in the Constructors' Championship. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I think the Red Bull downfall is got to be studied. I mean, whether or not it is Adrian Newey just leaving, I I, I don't know. I don't see how that can be. Like, what does he unplug his USB stick and then all of a sudden the car doesn't start up the same? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how it's happened. I'm going to be honest. It's refreshing to see a new challenge within the sport, and it's not even like, oh, there's no Red Bull now, but there's McLaren. There's anyone. Mercedes this weekend weren't really well. Lewis was there in practice, and then the same thing that seems to have happened all season. You get to qualifying and just something goes wrong. I've seen many things on Twitter saying someone needs to send Mercedes another email because we need to what's going on there. Something to do with like the tire temps and the way that they use the tire blankets just isn't right at all. But yeah, I just think now we've had a cracking season. We've got 7 more races to go. Very much looking forward to it. All sorts of stats will be being broken in the terms of having 4 drivers now, all on multiple wins. Hang on, Lewis, Oscar, Charles, Lando, Verstappen, 5 drivers on multiple wins. You've then got a 6th driver being George Russell and a 7th driver being Carlos Sainz. Perez could have won this weekend. It's like this is what we've been crying out for so long. And actually, there could be a bit of a debate at the end of the season if you compared this to 2021 on if this could have been a better season, because 2021 was an unbelievable season, but it was between Max and Lewis winning. I know obviously you've got your Hungary Grand Prix where Ocon won in there as well, and I think there's 1 or 2 Perez, and I think Bottas got 1, maybe 2, I think in Turkey or something. But either way, this now we've got 7 winners and someone else every other week. Brilliant.
No, it is. I mean, it's an absolutely phenomenal season. I've got the constructors table here actually to give you those numbers, and it is ridiculously close. So at first, obviously, you've got McLaren on 476. Behind them, with just 20 points less, is Red Bull with 456. And then behind them, just 31 points behind, is Ferrari on 425. And then obviously you've got a big gap to Mercedes on 309. But a 3-team challenge for the constructors is phenomenal. I mean, we must have to go back to over a decade for the last time for this to happen. Obviously, 2010 and 2012 were phenomenal years of Formula One. They're probably the last years that we had where multiple teams and multiple drivers from different teams were all gunning for the titles in both the constructors.
2012, there was like 5 or 6 different race winners the first 5 or 6 races. One of them being Pastor Maldonado in a Williams.
Yeah, no, so it's. I know we've said this for probably about the past 5 or 6 episodes, but it feels like now we really have got our sport back. The fact that we have actual racing for a win. We don't have drivers going off and winning by 15, 20 seconds. We have actual racing for a win. We have races for points, and every single point matters. With Lando finishing above Max, yes, it was only 4th, and yes, it was only 5th, but those 3 points are going to be so crucial come the end of the season. Obviously, so for the drivers' championship, we still have Verstappen in first on 313. Lando then in second, just 59 points behind, I want to say, on 254. Correct me if my math is wrong. Leclerc is then behind Lando by only 19 points on 235. And then Oscar is behind Leclerc by just 13 points on 222. So the gap between first and 4th in the championship is only 90. Oh, God, my maths. 91 points, I want to say. Yeah, 91 points.
It's crazy. I think the thing is as well with Verstappen is that, so he won 7 of the first 10 races. He's now not won in 7 races, and he's only had 2 podiums in those 7 races. So actually, talking as though this guy could still be world champion doesn't feel right. But it will. Like I said, it's gonna. I think Helmut Marko even said it. He probably will still win it because the others can't make their mind up on who else is going to win. It's not just a case of there's someone else picking up these wins, as in one person in particular, like Orlando. It's someone else every other week. So yeah, I think Max has definitely still got another podium, a few more podiums in this year, but a race win, I don't know. I really don't know. And we all know as well, Red Bull really struggle in Singapore, even in their dominant previous years. It's last year the only non-Red Bull race win came at Singapore, Carlos Sainz. So I think they'll struggle again next weekend. And Red Bull were the only team to bring upgrades this weekend. And obviously it didn't work for Max. Maybe it worked for Checo, but in the end, obviously that ended the way that it did. So yeah, it's really exciting. You mentioned earlier as well when we talked about the crash between Sainz and Perez about how that allowed others to move up the field. So Franco Colapinto obviously finishing P8 as you mentioned, and Ollie Beerman finishing 10th. But that 10th place finish for Ollie Beerman wasn't just a case of moving up because two had obviously DNF'd or crashed out. He caught his teammate Nico Hulkenberg lacking. Now, the VSC was called out, and to be fair, 50-50 my thoughts on Hulkenberg with this in this moment in particular, because yes, I too would expect it to either be a red flag or a safety car till the end. But the experience that he has for him to not be ready for a green flag at the end of the straight, I just would question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think looking at it from the outside in, obviously, I think the best way to put it, obviously, we're both massive fans of football. The best way to put it is it's very similar to the phrase "play till the whistle."
Yeah,
like it's not been red flagged, it's not been safety card, so just keep on going, doing what you're doing, unless you're told otherwise. They're at the highest point of motorsport, and to then obviously safety concerns, you're going to probably lift off a little bit, but you're a racer, you're keeping your foot to the floor pretty much the whole time, unless you obviously need to brake. But I mean, yeah, no, it's just
he lost 2 positions to Hamilton and then to Beerman.
It's un-Hulkenberg like. He's one of the most experienced drivers on the grid alongside Lewis and Alonso. But yeah, it's a very unlike him kind of mistake. Obviously, Beerman did benefit off of it, and so did Lewis as well. And I think I'd imagine that you would bring up this stat, Ben. But Beerman, I believe, is the first driver to score points for 2 different teams in his first race.
2 races.
Fed 2 different teams. So yeah, very, very interesting from him. It was interesting listening to him the whole weekend. Actually,
not as in first to score points for 2 different teams in 2 different races. It's the first to score points for 2 different teams in your first 2 races. So yeah.
But just quickly on Beerman, it was it's quite strange. His attitude towards everything when he carries himself in interviews and talking to those in the paddock, I recognised it in Jeddah as well. He always seems to be really harsh on himself. Like, he got the P7 in Jeddah, and he was saying it's not a great result. It's like, mate, it's your first time in a Formula One race. It's not a practice session; it's a race. Your first time in a Formula One race, and you get P7. That's a phenomenal result, and it was the same this week.
Where would you put his 2? Where would you put his 2? What would you? Because I'd say that this would be a better result because it being in a Haas.
Definitely. I mean, Haas were. I think if you look at the back markers now, especially after this weekend and the way that things have gone, and last weekend as well, I'll probably say Williams are probably the strongest of the midfield / back marker teams. I think aside
10 points this weekend.
I think it's what's really interesting is not only have we got that top 3 fight, but from I think them behind the top 3, we've obviously got Mercedes, who are kind of in no man's land, but behind them, it's really tightening up. I mean, I think let me just get out the.
Well, it's like a lot of drivers say that because of how strong the top 4 teams are, really, you're only battling for P9 and P10 every other week with all the other teams because the top 8 are going to be filled. So on a day like today where you've got the 2 that crash out, all of a sudden that then opens up the opportunity to obviously finish P8 and P7, which was taken by the two Williams drivers. But then with Lewis Hamilton also being out, you've got Alonso in P6. So really good points for these sorts of teams, these midfield teams. But yeah, there's now sort of the battle for P8 between Alpine and Williams. There's the battle for P6 between Haas and RB. I think really P5 will be Aston, P4 will be Mercedes. But then, yeah, obviously the top three as well. It's all to play for.
It is certainly going to be close. But yeah, no, I mean, going back to Beam quickly, I think it's I'm not sure whether it's something that's good for him or bad for him, but he seems to be, for a driver that's so young, he seems to be so critical of himself. I think obviously he'll take a step back after this weekend and be like, you know what, that's a really good point. But straight after obviously it's probably all the adrenaline, you've just finished the race, you're probably going to be a bit disappointed if you don't feel like you deserve the point that you got. But I do feel like sometimes he can be a bit overcritical of himself, which could play into his a bit of a downfall when he starts for Haas next season. I think he needs to kind of be a bit more proud of what he's accomplished in the car.
Does I know? Well, you'll speak towards the end about F2, but did anyone replace him in F2 this weekend, or was it just one Prema car?
Yes, Gabriele Mini, who obviously finished second in the Formula 3 Championship, replaced him in the Prema car this weekend. Obviously, we'll speak about that in a minute. But yeah, no, a good point for Bierman. But a quick question, Ben. You might know this, obviously, as a Lewis Hamilton fan. You might know this, but I was thinking this to myself when the race started. When is the last time Lewis started from the pit lane? Because I genuinely cannot remember.
That is a good question.
Because I was waiting to mention it on commentary, but they didn't. And I was like, I need to know this information.
I remember, obviously, the last time he started towards the back, and that was Brazil 2021, where you had that incredible weekend of last to first through the sprint weekends. But yeah, that is a really good point. I don't actually know.
I was looking at F1 stats. I was looking at F1 stats, and I was going through their website, and I just searched Lewis Hamilton starting grid positions. And I mean, I got back to 2016 and I couldn't find anything on whether he'd started from the pit lane. Obviously, I might have been wrong. But yeah, no, when I saw him in the pit lane, I was like, this is really weird to see the 7-time world champion starting from the pit lane. Obviously, you're used to seeing them start from the back of the grid, for example, but start from the pit lane? I can't remember the last time he's been there.
No, I can't. That's a very good point, though. I didn't even think of that. I mean, I had him to finish third in my predictions, but that was done before that penalty came in, and I was like, I'm not going to change it now. I'm just going to leave it. But yeah, it would have been a tough ask for him to get P3 in the end. He wouldn't have finished in the points if it wasn't for that crash as well. So he did get lucky, sort of in the end, to take 2 points from it. Yeah, I don't know actually. That is a very good question. I'm not too sure.
Well, if any of our listeners or viewers know, then just let us know in the comments, or let us know on Twitter or Instagram using our handles Trackside Pod F1.
Wow. What I did. By the way, so obviously spoke about Charles Leclerc never winning from pole in Baku, but I didn't actually know that P2 is his best ever result in Baku. So even in the 3 previous years, he would have finished probably either P3 or below.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah. He's only actually won one of his last 15 starts from pole, and that was Monaco this year. I know. Also, I just wanted to mention George Russell, because that's the second time this year he's been there to pick up the pieces. That's, you've got to be it on your bad days. It's kind of like golf. Your bad games got to be good. You've got to have a good bad game. So even when you're not performing, you still need to be able to be there to make par. Or, do you know what I mean? He needs to be in the positions where, of course, you can't guarantee that 2 drivers are going to go into each other, but if they do, you're there to pick up the pieces. It won him the race in Austria. It's got him on the podium in Azerbaijan.
It's what wins you championships in the feeder series as well. I mean, I spoke to Will about the feeder series results after Monza, but I failed to mention one crucial bit of information which helped Leo Fornaroli win the championship in Formula 3. and this might blow your mind a bit, Ben, but the championship winner, Leonardo Fornaroli, so he won the championship in Formula 3. He didn't win a single race all season.
What?
Yep. Didn't win a
No
single
way.
race all season, but he was there time and time again to pick up the pieces, seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, and he won the
That's
championship.
incredible. Imagine that in Formula One.
Just goes to show that you don't have to win, that you don't have to win races to do well. You just have to be there, keep yourself out of trouble, stay clean, and you win. I mean, it's a bonkers stat, but yeah, as it was shown by George this weekend, no matter what form of motorsport you're in, you do have to be there to pick up the pieces.
That's unbelievable. That'd be like Perez winning the championship this year. It'd be unbelievable.
No, that's never going to happen, Ben. We don't even need to think about that. That's not going to happen.
Oh, by the way, listen to this for a stat. So obviously Hulkenberg finished 11th, and that's the 7th time that he's finished 11th this season. And that breaks the record for the most times finishing one place outside the points in a single season after Alboreto in 1992. So
wow.
You won't like that. I'm surprised, actually, that that's Hulkenberg. When I think of 11th, I always associate Yuki Tsunoda. He's having rotten luck recently, by the way, Yuki.
No, I mean, that was a huge gaping hole in the side of his RB after his collision with Lance Stroll. I was going to say Lawrence Stroll for a second, but I think talking of Lawrence Stroll, it'll be a good segue because he's been emptying his pockets recently, isn't he?
He has, and they have signed Adrian Newey.
Yes,
which, by the way,
30 million a year.
I think what was hilarious about that was how Adrian Newey got a proper signing announcement, video and everything, and it was surely got to be the first time a team's ever done a signing announcement for a non-driver.
Yeah. No, it is.
But I totally get why.
Yeah, he's going to be a huge asset to the team. I mean, I saw something. I don't know whether it was Newey himself speaking on the matter or whether it was just something that I saw on social media. But apparently, Newey hasn't worked on the Red Bull since Suzuka this year.
Wow.
So, I mean, it might go to show on what's going on at Red Bull. But at the same time, I can't believe Will must be livid with the fact that Lance Stroll may get to drive one of the best cars of this generation.
Well, this is my thing, right? I don't think he'll have much effect on 2025 car because he doesn't start until March. And as you know, obviously, 2025 cars will already be in production now. I don't think Aston Martin will win a race next year. They might have a season in which they had last year where Alonso's there, every now and then. 2026 is when it begins. Now, obviously, Alonso's only contracted for next year because he signed a 1-year extension this year. He said this weekend that he'll be here next year, and then after that, and then another year after that. But obviously, whether or not that's the case, I don't know. I do want to see Alonso in the 2026 Adrian Newey car. I don't want to see Lance Stroll in a 2026 Adrian Newey car. But they are, as Ted Kravitz said, they are the team for the future.
Indeed.
And Clarkson was right all along. He was house hunting in Oxfordshire.
He was, but yeah.
Have you watched the last Grand Tour episode?
Oh, don't even get me started.
So emotional, isn't it? That ending, so sad.
Very emotional. But yeah, I mean, as you said, they have got the car for the future, but it's not just the car. They've got the facilities. They've got a driver, one singular driver. Let me make that clear. And they've got one of the best designers the sport has ever seen.
Do you know what I'd want to happen? I'd want Alex Albon to go to Aston Martin and then Colapinto get the Williams here alongside Sainz.
That would be, that would be an interesting move. That, but no, unfortunately, I don't think it will happen. I mean, it would be good to see because I think Albon would work perfectly with Alonso. I think as a kind of number 2 to Alonso, I think he could work quite well. But yeah, I mean, hypothetically, let's say that Aston Martin for 2026 bring the best car on the grid and they dominate. And let's say Alonso wins the championship. surely that's got to be the longest time period between world championships. That's 20
100%.
years between two world championships.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be the oldest because I think Fangio is the oldest world champion. But in terms of, so 2006 would have been the last time. And then 2026, 20. Wow. Yeah, that would be unbelievable. That would be that'd been like if James Milner won the Premier League with like Leeds and then won it with Brighton. Yeah, that would be unbelievable. But no, you're right. I think that definitely would be the case. I can't think of anyone who won a championship 20 years apart.
No. I mean, it would be an amazing feat, but we will have to wait and see for that. I mean, unless there's anything else that we need to gloss over. I mean, I just want to quickly say how poor of a season that Sauber are having. I mean, Will thinks their car looks nice, but to me and you, their car's performing as well as it looks absolutely horribly.
I think Joe did a good job this weekend for P14, beating Alpine. I've seen actually Bottas spoke on it as well, that he says he still sees his future in Formula One, but hypothetically, if it wasn't to be, that he'd want to give IndyCar a go. I mean, I think Formula One drivers are very much in their right to be able to go, right, I would like to go to IndyCar now. And I think IndyCar should be very grateful to have Formula One drivers drop down to IndyCar. But the way that IndyCar is spoken about, if I was like an ultra IndyCar fan, I'd find it disrespectful. It's kind of spoken about as in, there's no space for me here now, but I can easily go to your sport. It's true because these are super licensed drivers, but it is a little bit disrespectful. But I suppose that is the chain. That is the way it is. Formula One is the superior sport of motorsport. You can't deny it. But yeah, I'd like to see that. Of course, you've obviously got Romain Grosjean there, Marcus Ericsson in IndyCar. And on the topic of IndyCar, congratulations to Alex Palou, who is the champion for the third time in the last 4 seasons. I watched it at the Nashville Motor Speedway, the Music City Grand Prix. 200 laps of the oval. His first oval, Colton Herta's first oval win, but Alex Palou winning the championship. Beating Will Power to it. It's good. I haven't watched all the IndyCar races this year, but the ones I have watched are brilliant. And the Indy 500, I am convinced is probably the greatest thing I've ever watched in my life. That was unbelievable when Joseph Newgarden won it again this year. So yeah, well done.
But yeah, quickly on the.
Sorry. You watched it as well, didn't you? The race.
Yes.
Yeah, the IndyCar race. Did you see the guy at the start that says the prayer? How good was that? That was the most American thing I've ever seen. It was brilliant. It was so patriotic. It was unbelievable.
He was there in his dungarees, and I was like, they just picked up some farmer off the road or something. I don't know who he was. Forgive me if he's some like American idol.
Cult hero, yeah.
Yeah, but no, it was brilliant. I mean, to say that Alex Palou picked Will Power to the title was quite weird, because going into the race it was all like, Will Power versus Alex Palou, who's going to win the championship? And then Will Power ended up finishing 4th in the championship, which just blows my mind a little bit. But yeah,
he said he's been in this sport for years and he's had all sorts of engine failures and crashes and whatnot. But this is the first time he ever had a belt failure, and the buckle on his belt just came undone. And apparently, it also happened again in the race. So that is a tough way to lose out on a championship.
Just to put that into context as well, like I was obviously, it's you think about it and it's kind of like, it's a seatbelt. Like you're in the cockpit, you've just got a seatbelt. It's not that big of an issue. But when you put it in terms of you're going around this oval 190 to 200 miles an hour, if you go off the racing line onto the marbles, you might as well just give up. You're going into the wall at the top of the track. So if Will Power made one wrong move going into a corner or coming out of a corner at 190 miles an hour, he would have been in the wall without a seatbelt on. Would have been ridiculously
and he even referenced
scary.
to it himself that he even referenced it to himself. He'd be like, what's the word that they call it? Ejected out of the seat. So that would have been terrible.
ridiculous. But I think that perfectly segues onto another incident that actually did happen. This time, going back to Baku, we're going to speak about Formula 2. The sprint race was pole was won by Richard Verschoor. The sprint race was won by Joshua Dirksen, which was a phenomenal result for the young Paraguayan, becoming the first Paraguayan. Obviously, earlier on this year, he became the first Paraguayan to get a podium in Formula 2, and he actually had a call with the Paraguayan president on the podium, which is a huge event. And then obviously he's gone and won and became the first ever Paraguayan winner in Formula 2 as well. So people are saying, as Alex Jakes and Alex Brundle said over commentary, they said, well, what the hell is the president going to do now? Because he had a phone call with him. What's he going to do? Buy him a house? So, yeah, massive congratulations to Josh Dirksen. But the feature race on Sunday started off with a huge and very scary collision. Pepe Marti going into the back of Kush Miney, who had stalled on the grid, and Pepe Marti flipped his car. Luckily, all drivers were okay. Ollie Gerfer was also involved in the crash, losing, going into the back of Miney as well, losing his front wheel. All drivers were luckily okay, but my God, it was a huge crash. And I mean, it was very scary to see it happen, but it just goes to show the level of safety measures that are taken these days and how structurally secure. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Structurally secure the cars actually are. I mean, obviously the survival cell does a brilliant job. The roll hoop does well, and the halo again coming in handy in saving a driver's life, because potentially that could have been a fatal collision. So it's brilliant that all drivers are okay, but yeah, certainly a scary incident. Richard Verschoor actually went on to win that race with Antonelli finishing P4, I believe. And yeah, a bit of a disappointing weekend for him. He started P2. I think he came P3 actually in the end in the feature race. But yeah, no, another great weekend of Formula 2 action. Gabriel Bortoleto now takes the lead, and he is now, after a very successful season so far, he is now being considered for the Sauber seat for next year. I've heard a little rumour flying about, which would be very exciting to see. Obviously, he's been doing absolutely fantastically. Won Formula 3 last year and has come in and hit the ground running in Formula 2 this year. So, yeah, great to see. But just quickly again on the accident, what me and my brother were discussing is the fact of Marty done very well not to go directly into the back of Miney, because if he went straight into the back, it could have been a horrific incident. He managed to turn his car in a way that it kind of just went across the engine cover. I mean, it absolutely destroyed both of the cars, and it was literally, it looked like you'd gone to a tip and seen the remains of a Formula Series car just left there stranded on the track. But yeah, the fact that he managed to not go directly into the back of Miney and all drivers were safe is phenomenal stuff. But quickly, so Ben, you must be aware of Lord Mahavir Raghunathan.
Of course I am.
The worst driver to grace the feeder series.
He is, but the guy you're about to mention is up there too.
He may indeed have a competitor. Niels Coughlan. So I spoke to Will about this last time out when we spoke about the feature race in Monza. He has been promoted to Formula 2 after never getting a point in a open wheel spec race series before. Never got a point, and he's been promoted to Formula 2.
So, of course, this is a financial thing, but he's got to have. It can't even be sponsors. It's got to be like he's just got like a dad that's willing to pay.
I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. I just saw his name pop up on the grid. No one really seems to be talking about it. But I mean, it's painful to watch. It's the best way.
Dangerous as well for the other drivers.
It is very dangerous. I mean, after 9 laps around Baku, he was 15 seconds down on the next car ahead of him. So he was 22nd, and the next car ahead of him was 21st, and he was 15 seconds down on the car ahead of him, who was Villa Gomez. Just 5 laps later, I believe, he was then 30 seconds behind.
That's
Essentially,
crazy.
you're losing 3 seconds a lap in a series where all cars and all engines are the same. Obviously, the engineers make adjustments to the cars and make adjustments to the engines to get the best out of them each weekend. But to be 30 seconds back in 15 laps, it's not only ridiculous that he's in the sport, but it's also dangerous for him to be on track. Because especially around Baku with the blind fast corners, if he's sitting on the racing line going miles off the pace and a car's coming to lap him, obviously you've got the blue flags and the safety procedures. But if a driver, for some reason, a faster driver doesn't see these blue flags, it could be a fatal incident or a critical incident. So I don't understand why he's in the sport when you've got drivers in Formula 3 that have come up. Obviously, I've made TikToks about it. Luke Browning, Gabriele Milli and Christian Mansell all making their debuts this weekend. All done really well, bearing in mind it's their first time in a Formula 2 car. And to have him on the grid, it just doesn't seem right. I just want to end on the feeder series as a whole in some very exciting news for me personally. At the start of the year, when I was watching Formula 3 and I was watching Formula 2, I recognised that Arvid Lindblad was going to be a fairly good racer. I mean, he's still only 16 years old. And I mean, every time I now play Formula 1 Manager on my Xbox, I always sign him. That's like the first thing I do. I sign him into my academy as an affiliate and I sign him on for like 3 or 4 years. But I've seen him race a few times this year and he has that something special. And he has been gifted, or not gifted, but he has been rewarded with his great drives this season with a promotion to Formula 2 for next season. And I'm really, really excited to see what he's going to do in that Campos. Obviously, Red Bull Academy driver. In a few years' time, I could actually see him in Formula 1. Don't know if he'll quite compete for a title just yet. Obviously, he's still only young and he'll have to prove himself next year in Formula 2. But my, oh my, Great Britain have got another fantastic talent on their hands. But yeah, to wrap up Formula 2 and the feeder series, I think that's all I have for you today. So unless there's anything else to mention, we've covered Formula 1, IndyCar and the feeder series. So you've got bang for your buck listening to the Trackside podcast. I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention, Ben, but aside from that, I think
just wanted to say, I just wanted to say, obviously, we've mentioned in 7 races to go. Of course, that I should also mention that does include 3 sprint race weekends: COTA in America, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and then Lusail in Qatar. So still a lot of points up for grabs. I'm still going to go with Verstappen to win the Drivers' Championship, McLaren to win the Constructors. Just looking forward to it, though. Just looking forward to race weekends again. Of course, we're done with the European season now, so I'm sure the timings will go back to being a little bit annoying for us. But I know the Singapore Grand Prix, because it's a night race, it's a 1 p.m. race for us here, so that's still all okay. Singapore's always a good one anyway, so look forward to that. Look forward to the trio being back as well.
Indeed. But until then, that is all from us. Ben, thank you for joining me today and taking me through the Baku race weekend once again. It's lovely to have you back after not seeing you for the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, you too. And just before you go, who's your driver of the weekend?
I'm going to give it to Franco Colapinto. Obviously, I might be a bit biased because obviously I like feeder series and I like Williams as a team. But no, I think he's done brilliantly. He's got more points in 2 races than Logan did in his whole career. I think the gamble on getting rid of Logan and bringing Franco in has definitely paid off for Williams, not only on track, but financially as well, it seems to. So yeah, I think Franco has done absolutely brilliantly. Only his 2nd Formula 1 race and he's getting a P8 finish. Yeah. Fantastic result.
The reason, so I agree. I think fantastic weekend. I will give mine to Piastri, but I'll give you the reasons as to why I'm not going to give it to Colapinto. Only because I'm very skeptic on jumping on the hype train of people that do well at Williams, because Nick De Vries scored points on his Williams debut in Monza and then was axed at AlphaTauri after 12 races. So fantastic weekend for Colapinto. I'm very happy for him, and I hope it continues. And I would love to see him get a seat next year if he keeps up weekends like these. But the reason I will give it to Piastri is because I think his art of defence this weekend was brilliant, and I don't want to jump the gun too quickly on Colapinto.
I would give it to Piastri, but I want to be different. So
yeah, it's fair enough. Fair enough. We like different.
So that is episode 18 of the Trackside Podcast this season. Ben, thank you for being with me. We'll be back again next week to take you all through the Singapore race weekend. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Check out all of our socials, Trackside Podcast F1 on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok. But until next week, we will see you all later.